All right, thank you for your patience, your greater than usual flexibility on timing and everything else. All right, just to give you an update, since last night, the Secretary General and his team have been working the phones. He's been in constant contact with Israeli authorities, urging them to avert a humanitarian catastrophe. He's also had phone contacts with permanent representatives here in New York and other officials in the region. Our efforts at headquarters in the field are focused on the following main points. We need to ensure full support for opening humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip to prevent a further loss of civilian life. It is vital that Israeli authorities protect all civilians in UNRWA shelters, including schools, and protect all civilians, full stop. UN facilities must be protected at all times and must never come under attack in accordance with international humanitarian law. We're also continuing to do our utmost to mobilize life-saving humanitarian assistance. Our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs have launched a flash appeal, and I'll have a bit more on that in a second. And our colleagues at the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, which desperately needed financial help before this crisis, needs it even more now. And we want to thank the government of Jordan for its generous donation. We must ensure the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages being held in Gaza, and we need, of course, to avoid a spillover of this conflict to the West Bank and to the wider region. Just to give you a bit more detail on the humanitarian front, UNRWA tells us that it has relocated its central operations and international staff to a location in the southern Gaza Strip to continue its humanitarian operations and to support to own staff and, of course, to Palestine refugees in the Gaza Strip. UNRWA urges the Israeli authorities to protect everyone, as we've said. UNRWA also notes that since the 7th of October, 423,000 people have already been displaced. Of them, more than 270,000 have taken refuge in UNRWA shelters, and those numbers are as of last night. We've not been able to get updated numbers due to the current situation, but they are likely to be exponentially higher. And in those shelters, of course, as one can expect, basic food, medicine, and support is being provided to retain dignity and a glimmer of hope for those who have sought shelter. We urge all parties and those with influence over them to put an end to this tragedy. Also, since Wednesday, as you know, Gaza has been experiencing a full electricity blackout, which has brought essential health and water and sanitation services to the brink of collapse. Hospitals only have a few hours of electricity each day as they're forced to ration depleting fuel reserves. That's according to our colleagues at the World Health Organization. They also face severe shortages of medicine and blood. Lack of electricity, as one can easily imagine, has impacted food security as well, disrupting refrigeration and irrigation. No aid is currently getting in to the Gaza Strip as border crossings remain closed. And our colleagues on the ground are telling us that the UN's own supplies have now hit the bottom of the barrel. UN Women reports that Gaza is home to 50,000 pregnant women who are struggling to access essential health services as healthcare workers, hospitals, and clinics come under attack. Some 5,500 of these women are due to give birth in the coming months. And just as a reminder, I think we shared with you some details of what happened last night, which was that team leaders of the UN office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and the Department of Safety and Security in Gaza were informed by the Israeli liaison officers that the Israeli military and the entire population of Gaza north of Wadi Gaza should relocate to southern Gaza within 24 hours. That was as of midnight local time last night. This amounts to approximately 1.1 million people. The same order applied to all UN staff and those sheltered in UN facilities, including schools, health centers, and clinics. We consider it is impossible for such a movement to take place without devastating humanitarian consequences, and we strongly appeal for any such order to be rescinded, avoiding what could transform what is already a tragedy into calamitous situation. And over to Lebanon, where I can tell you I've spoken to our colleagues just a few minutes ago, and we're indeed very concerned by reports of renewed explosions in UNIFIL's area of operation. The mission is also receiving very distressing reports about one journalist being killed and others being wounded, including severely wounded. The UNIFIL leadership has been actively engaging with authorities on both sides of the blue line to try to de-escalate the situation and avoid any serious miscalculation. Peacekeepers are continuing to do their essential work and remain on task in order to avoid any spillover in that particular area. One second. Thank you. Turning to Syria, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the UN has completed the mission in the country's northwest yesterday to assess the ongoing humanitarian response in the wake of increased hostilities in Idlib over the past week, which is the most significant since 2019. Our humanitarian partners and local health authorities say the fighting has killed more than 50 people, including 15 children, with more than 300 injured. 3 aid workers were among the dead. The interagency team, led by the Deputy Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for Syria, David Carden, visited a reception center and the Sham Surgical Hospital, which has treated some 36 patients and injured in the latest fighting. The team also spoke with health workers and displaced families. Nearly 70,000 men, women, and children have reportedly been displaced due to the hostilities, with some 24 health facilities and 17 education facilities also affected. We and our partners are stepping up the response efforts, reaching some 17,000 people with food assistance, more than 800 families with shelter and other essential supplies. This morning, the Security Council heard from Adeji Ebo, the Director and Deputy High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. He briefing the Council on the provision of military assistance to the armed forces of Ukraine, he said, has continued in the context of the full-scale invasion of that country. He said the UN Office of Disarmament Affairs also takes notes of reports related to the transfer of depleted uranium tank ammunition to the Ukrainian forces. In addition, Mr. Ebo said there have been reports of states transferring or planning to transfer weapons such as uncrewed aerial vehicles and ammunition to the Russian armed forces, including for possible use in Ukraine. He added that reports related to the use of anti-personnel landmines and the use of transfer of cluster munitions in Ukraine is deeply concerning. On behalf of the High Representative, Mr. Ebo called for an immediate end to the use of these inhumane and indiscriminate weapons, which have severe and lasting humanitarian impact. Also want to flag that the UN mission in Afghanistan today expressed its deep sorrow and condolences to all those killed and wounded in this afternoon's explosion in the Shia mosque in Pul el-Kumri. UNAMA said it is working on the grounds to establish facts about the incident. And related to that, UNHCR today launched an appeal for $14.4 million to scale up its assistance for those impacted by the tragic recent earthquakes in Western Afghanistan. And just want to flag a senior personnel appointment. Today, Secretary General appointed Volker Perthes of Germany as the head of the Independent Strategic Review of the UN Assistance Mission in Iraq, which was mandated by Security Council Resolution 2682. Mr. Perthes brings to this position 3 decades of experience in academia, research, international relations, and diplomacy, including with the UN. And as you all know, he recently served as the head of mission in Sudan. And I think I will leave it at that. I will mention that for programming note, I hope the Secretary General will come by the Security Council stakeout on his way in to speak with you. In the meantime, Michelle.
Thank you, Steph. As you've already referenced, a group of journalists was struck in southern Lebanon. The journalists were from Reuters, AFP, and Al Jazeera. Several have been injured, and a Reuters journalist has been killed. What's your reaction to this?
Extend all our deepest condolences to you and all of your colleagues at Reuters and all of the and all your family. And of course, wish a speedy recovery to all the other journalists that were injured. We understand one was severely injured. This is yet another example of the daily dangers journalists face in covering conflict throughout the world, and we do hope that there is an investigation as to exactly what happened.
Just a quick follow-up, any messages to the parties involved in this conflict with regard to journalists covering it?
Without journalists, we can't know what's going on, and journalists need to be protected and allowed to do their work. Ibtisam and then Caitlin.
Steph, regarding the it doesn't go unnoticed the fact that the Secretary General, although he's calling for stopping the circle of violence, he is not calling on the Israeli army to stop bombing Gaza. Why not?
I think the Secretary, the Secretary General wants to see an end to the violence that we're seeing. He wants to see an end to civilians being killed. I think that is clear enough.
But that's not clear enough. That's not.
That's what I'm telling
Okay,
you.
I have another question. I asked you 2 days ago about the fact that some news reports that the Israelis used phosphor bombs in Gaza, and Human Rights Watch published a report yesterday confirming that, and in Gaza and Lebanon. Any comments?
We have not seen. Sorry. I've seen these reports from Human Rights Watch and others, but we have no way of. We have not had any independent information from our end, and if we do get something, I will share that with you.
There are some news reports about Palestinians being killed by Israeli forces, about 10 or more, according to local news reports, in demos in Jerusalem. Any comments?
We're looking into those reports. Caitlin.
On the evacuation notice in northern Gaza, how is this mass removal being organized? Are UN agencies involved at all in facilitating movement? I know you said UNRWA is moving its operations there south, but is it helping people move as well? Is it helping civilians move south?
Well.
And on the same question, just the Norwegian Refugee Council has said that the relocation of Gazan civilians amounts to the war crime of forcible transfer. Does the UN have a position on this?
We are not. In terms of the UN, the UNRWA staff, many stayed, many asked to stay, and have stayed up north. We are not pushing people to move. People have to make their own decisions. We've relocated some of our staff in order to protect our own staff, and also to continue serving those Palestinians who have moved to the south. But we have there are 13,000 UNRWA staff members in Gaza, frontline workers, teachers, doctors, nurses, people offering psychosocial services. They are staying with the people they are tasked to support.
Just on the
Sorry.
war crimes.
No, I have no. I mean, let me just put it this way: we have repeatedly, will continue to repeatedly call for the full respect of international humanitarian law. Go ahead.
A few questions, Stefan. First, are any more details about exactly which Israeli authorities the Secretary General spoke to? We've heard from the Palestinian ambassador this morning. He wants the Secretary General to use every effort, including getting the Security Council to call for a ceasefire. And just again on this point, I mean, the Secretary General consistently says that the strongest tool he has is his voice. The Palestinian ambassador said what we're seeing in Gaza amounts to ethnic cleansing. Genocide. I mean, does the UN have any reaction to what we're hearing from them?
People should not be forced to move against their will. The issue of as we've said in many other contexts, the labeling of genocide is one that needs to be made by judicial authority. The Secretary General's focus right now is on ensuring that Israel allows humanitarian aid to get through. It's been 6 days since anything has come in. I mean, the UNRWA colleague I just got off the phone with just said they hadn't been able to get a drop of water in there in 6 days. We're literally at the bottom of the barrel, right? We are doing what we can, working with the Israelis, obviously working with the Egyptians, to try to get aid in. Our Mr. Vennesland is in the region, having serious contacts with various interlocutors, also trying to bring an end to this conflict. Maggie.
Steph, any idea on the numbers of Gazans who have actually been able to leave and evacuate to southern Gaza? Any idea at all?
No.
And the Palestinian ambassador also mentioned today that flights had arrived at Al Arish. Are those? Do you know if they are UN flights?
My understanding, there were a number of flights that arrived. I think even yesterday. I do not believe these are yet UN flights, but we're working with the Egyptian authorities, various UN agencies. Will be sending staff, or in the process of sending staff there to kind of prepare the ground. But there needs to be safety for humanitarian workers and civilians in order to have humanitarian access. Pam and then Linda.
Steph, I asked you before, but looking for an update. 24 hours was what the Israeli military liaisons had told UN, OCHA, and we're seeing some reports that the Israeli military is saying it's not a definite timeline.
I think you need to. All those questions should be asked to the Israeli military.
Yes, I understand.
I mean, it's not. I can only tell you what we've been told, but it's not for me to speak on their behalf.
No, I
in
totally
order
understand.
of their timelines.
Have they updated any information to you on the timeline?
I mean, we are. It is clear to us that the clock is ticking. Linda, then Ephraim.
Thank you, Steph. You said that the Secretary General's primary focus or important focus is he's been speaking with the Israelis to allow aid to get in. My question is this, has the SG also been in touch with Hamas to get the hostages released? And I bring that up especially because Israel seems to be saying that if Hamas releases the hostages, aid will flow.
Look, we're not. There are all sorts of political contacts going on, and I'm not going to go into those details. I can tell you that the SG last night spoke twice to the Israeli ambassador. This morning he spoke to the foreign minister of Qatar. He spoke to all the P5 ambassadors. He spoke to the PR of Brazil. He spoke to Jake Sullivan at the White House. contacts with the Palestinian Authority are also going on the ground. I mean, and contacts with the de facto authorities have to happen because they're the de facto authorities in Gaza. We're not. This is, for us, this is not an issue of conditionality, right? All these things need to happen.
Has he been in touch with Hamas?
I think I've answered my question to your question to the best of my ability. Yes. Ephraim, then Jen.
Thank you, Steph. There have been messages circulated this morning by State Department staff saying that high-level officials in the Biden administration do not want to see press materials that include 3 words: de-escalation, ceasefire, end to violence and bloodshed, restoring calm. They do not want to see these 3 words in press material coming out of State Department. My question is, does the Secretary General have any reaction to Biden administration's reluctance to push Israel for restraint?
It's difficult enough for us to find the words that we want to use. Doesn't make anybody happy. I'm not going to start commenting on what others' words they
One
use.
quick one, too. There have also reports of Palestinian nationals in the U.S. being detained by ICE, also being visited by the FBI. The FBI has also been visiting multiple mosques and talking to Arab inmates. Is there any concern about this trend?
I've not seen those reports. I think what we do not want to see in any in this situation is scapegoating of communities in any way, shape, or form. Jen.
Thank you. I guess just to lay it out clearly, what steps would it take, in your opinion, for aid to start flowing, and
But we need
how
the green light
close-
from the Israelis. Okay. Yes, Sergey.
Sergey Barbo, Ukrainian TV Channel 5. Just now, Ukrainian service of Voice of America reported North Korea provided Russia over 1,000 containers of military equipment for use in Ukraine. It said John Kirby. What is the UN position on this? Thank you.
That's their information. The only thing I can tell you is that it is vital that all member states fully adhere to the sanctions put in place by the Security Council. Stefano.
Thank you, Stefan. It's a follow-up on, actually on you, when you say to us that the Secretary General spoke with U.S. Ambassador and also with Jack Sullivan at the White House.
Yeah.
Why, in a situation like this, the Secretary General is not speaking directly to President Biden?
The Secretary General will speak to whoever he needs to speak to.
Did he ask to speak to President?
The Secretary General, he's. I have to tell you, he's. We were in the office for 5.5, 6 hours continuously last night. He just picks up the phone and he calls people. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Dulcie, and then we'll go to CBC.
Thanks very much. So all these conversations last night, 5 or 6 hours, what's the gist of it? Because you say that he had all these conversations, including with Jake Sullivan. So what's the prevailing demand and
well, I mean,
what's going to happen?
the aim is exactly the points that I laid out in the beginning. We were also trying to get some clarity regarding the initial information we were getting from the Israeli authorities.
But did Jake Sullivan say, we're working on ending this siege?
I think you need to ask Admiral Kirby. I can't speak for them. I can't speak for them. Yep.
Thanks, Steph. So we're halfway through now this 24-hour evacuation order.
Yeah.
And you've said as much that it's impossible to heed this call without causing a humanitarian catastrophe. Is there any sense that the Secretary General's voice is carrying any weight whatsoever with the Israelis?
That's an analysis I will leave to you. Ibtisam. No, and I'm not being flippant. I'm saying that's an analysis that I will leave to you. You need to see what the situation is on the ground, and But it's not for me to
I mean,
to
from all of
grade.
the reporting, we're not getting any sense
Right,
that anything coming out of the UN is carrying any weight. What are you getting from
we
your
all
office?
see what is going on, and we all see what is happening, and you can draw your own conclusions. Ibtisam.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about creating safe passages. My question is, it's not always clear what does that exactly mean, and is there a talk of doing such or creating such places outside of Gaza?
We do not want to see a situation where people who've been displaced already are forced to leave again. People should be able to be safe in their own homes. We're obviously trying to see what we can do to keep people safe within Gaza and create areas of safety for humanitarian aid and for civilians who want to move to safer places within Gaza.
And just a kind reminder that we need to talk to somebody.
I know. Trust me. I've been trying because nothing I would like more than somebody else to answer questions. Deji.
Two questions. First, I remember you said that the SG is trying to have a conversation with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Has that happened, or is that been scheduled?
When it happens, I will let you know.
But is it being scheduled, or it's just a request from the SG to talk to Prime Minister?
It's in the pipeline. I'll let you know when it happens.
Okay, so my second question, we know this is a period of time of high tension, but on social media we saw many disinformation, misinformation, as well as some hate materials. Do you have any messages for social platforms and people who are using those platforms to how to do the right thing?
Well, I think
there?
social media platforms have a responsibility, especially at these moments, to ensure that what goes on their platform is not full of hate, doesn't lead to violence, and is actually fact-based instead of being fiction-based. And I think all of us, as social media users, also have a responsibility not to forward information or pass along information that is very likely false. I saw it even yesterday with messages that my family was getting about things that may happen in New York, which was completely false, and it was being passed around by people who should know better. Yeah, exactly. Pam, Michelle, then Stefano, then I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Steph. The Israeli mission was bringing families to ECOSOC chamber of hostages that are being held now in Gaza. Have they reached out at all? Has the SG met with them? Has anyone from the UN
I'm not
at all?
aware that they've asked for a meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Michelle, then Stefano.
I know you've kind of answered this throughout, but in the interest of fair comment, the Palestinian UN envoy also did say this morning that the Secretary General has to do more because whatever is being done is not sufficient to stop a crime against humanity by Israel.
The Secretary General has not stopped working on this, and I've witnessed it from the time I've spent with him and to the phone calls that woke me up this morning from him. Stefano.
Yes, about the Secretary General doing more. Is he thinking to go there? Actually, there are a lot of ministers at the moment that they are there in Israel.
The Secretary General will travel when he thinks it is most useful for him to travel. And since Maggie is leaving, I'm leaving. Okay, that's fine.
Fawn.
Yeah?
It's Dawn. I just have a quick question.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Given the conversations that the Secretary General's having, and given U.S. foreign policy priorities towards the state of Israel, does the Secretary General believe at this point that the U.S. can be an honest and impartial broker of de-escalation and peace with the situation?
I think every member of the international community who has a way to influence or influence over the parties should work in that direction. Thank you.